I used to believe that if your doors were locked and your windows were closed, you were safe. That danger only came from outside. Strangers, darkness, things you could see coming. I was wrong. Sometimes the worst part isn't that something breaks into your home. It's realizing something has already been there, long before you noticed. I didn't find fingerprints. I didn't find footprints. I didn't find broken locks or shattered glass. I found proof that someone had been living inside my house while I slept. I moved into the house at the beginning of spring. It was a small, older place, tucked into a quiet neighborhood. The kind of street where everyone had lived there for years, and nothing ever seemed to happen. The rent was cheap, the rooms were clean. The silence felt peaceful, at least at first. The first week went by without anything unusual. I unpacked, set up my furniture, and started getting into a routine. Work during the day, quiet nights at home, streaming shows, falling asleep on the couch sometimes. It felt safe. Then, little things started going missing. At first, it was stupid stuff. A spoon left on the counter that I didn't remember using. My phone charger unplugged and moved to the other side of the room. Cabinet doors left open when I was sure I'd closed them. I blamed myself. I figured I was tired, distracted, maybe just sloppy while unpacking. Everyone misplaces things. But the feeling never quite went away. Some nights, when the house was completely silent, I'd get this strange sense that something felt off. Not like fear exactly, more like awareness, like being watched without actually seeing anything. I started double-checking locks before bed. Front door, back door, windows, closet doors, everything. Nothing was ever out of place, until the smell started. One morning I woke up and smelled coffee, fresh coffee. The problem was, I didn't own a coffee maker yet. I was still using instant packets. The smell was strong, rich, warm, unmistakable. I walked through the kitchen expecting to see something spilled or burned. Nothing. No cups, no grounds, no mess. The smell faded within minutes, leaving the house normal again. That should have been my first real warning. A few days later, I came home from work and found the shower curtain slightly damp. I hadn't showered that morning. The mirror in the bathroom had faint fog marks on it, like someone had wiped their hand across it recently. I stood there staring at my reflection, trying to convince myself it was leftover humidity from pipes or temperature changes. But deep down, my stomach tightened. Someone had been using my bathroom. That night, I barely slept. Every creak of the house sounded louder than usual. Every shift of air made my eyes snap open. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening. Nothing happened. No footsteps, no doors, no voices. Just silence. The next morning, I found a plate in the sink with crumbs on it. I hadn't eaten anything the night before. That's when panic finally took root. I walked through every room, checking closets, under the bed, behind doors. I even opened the crawl space access in the hallway ceiling. Empty, dusty, undisturbed. No signs of forced entry, no broken locks, no open windows. I started to wonder if I was losing my mind. Maybe stress was getting to me. Maybe I was sleepwalking. Maybe my memory was worse than I thought. I installed a cheap motion camera in the living room facing the hallway and front door. It wasn't fancy, but it recorded movement and stored footage on my phone. That night, I left it running. I locked myself in the bedroom and tried to sleep. Sleep came in short bursts. I kept waking up with that same strange feeling, like something had shifted in the house. In the morning, I checked the footage. At first, everything looked normal. Hours of empty hallway, shadows shifting as the heater turned on and off. Then at 2:17 a.m., the motion sensor triggered. The hallway light turned on. My breath caught in my throat. The camera showed the hallway exactly as I'd left it. Doorways dark, floor empty. Then something moved. A shadow passed slowly across the wall. Tall, narrow, stretched by the angle of the light. It didn't rush. It didn't stumble. It moved with purpose. The camera caught a partial shape entering the kitchen doorway. Just a shoulder, a sliver of a head. Then it vanished out of frame. The hallway light turned off 2 minutes later. I watched the clip over and over until my hands started shaking. Someone had been inside my house while I slept. I packed a bag immediately and went to stay with a friend for the night. I didn't even grab everything, just clothes, charger, keys. I told myself I'd come back in daylight with someone else. That afternoon, my friend and I returned to the house together. Everything looked normal. No signs of damage, no missing items, no footprints, no mess. But when I went into the spare bedroom, the one I barely used, I noticed something wrong. The closet door was open. Inside, on the floor, was a folded blanket. Not mine. It was dusty, worn, and smelled faintly like sweat and old fabric. Under it was a flattened area of carpet, like someone had been laying there repeatedly. My chest went cold. Someone hadn't just been sneaking into my house. Someone had been staying here. We called the police. They searched the house thoroughly. They found no one. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry. The officer suggested maybe a previous tenant had left something behind, but he couldn't explain the camera footage. He couldn't explain the plate. He couldn't explain the damp shower. He couldn't explain the blanket. That night, I didn't stay in the house. I didn't stay the next night either. 2 days later, the landlord called me. He sounded nervous. He said maintenance had checked the attic access and found something disturbing. The crawl space above the hallway had signs of recent use. Disturbed insulation, footprints in the dust, a small opening leading into the wall cavity. There was enough space for a person to crawl through the structure of the house unnoticed. Someone had been living inside the walls, using vents to move, dropping down into the house when I slept, listening, watching, leaving before morning. They never found who it was. No neighbors reported seeing anyone. No cameras outside caught movement. No history of squatters in the area. I moved out that week. I threw away half my belongings. I still lock my doors 3 times every night. And sometimes, when the house is completely quiet, I still smell coffee that isn't there. Story 2. I used to believe that a phone meant safety. Signal meant connection. Connection meant you were never truly alone. I learned the hard way that sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't losing signal. It's realizing that something is still able to reach you when nothing should. I found the phone lying beside a narrow hiking trail late one afternoon. The sky was heavy with low clouds, the air cold and damp, the forest unusually quiet. It looked like someone had dropped it while walking. Cracked screen, dirt smeared across the edges, leaves partially covering the casing. My first instinct was that someone nearby might be hurt. I picked it up. The screen flickered on immediately. There was no lock screen, no password, no signal bars, no service icon, nothing. Yet somehow, a message notification was waiting on the screen, already opened, already typed. The message asked if I could see the old fire tower from where I was standing. My stomach tightened. There was an abandoned fire lookout tower on a ridge a couple miles east of the trail. It hadn't been operational for years. No power, no reception. Most people avoided it. I looked around the woods, half expecting to see someone watching me from behind the trees. The trail was empty, only wind moving through branches. I replied, confused, asking what tower they meant. The answer came immediately. They described the fire tower on the ridge perfectly, even mentioning the broken ladder and the small equipment shed beside it. Details you wouldn't know unless you'd been there. They said they were stuck nearby, that their phone had died, that this damaged phone barely worked but was the only way they could communicate. It didn't make sense. The device in my hand showed absolutely no signal, yet the messages kept appearing instantly, like the phone was connected to something invisible. Against my better judgment, I told them I could try to get closer and see if I could call for help once I had service. They urged me to hurry. I started down the side trail toward the ridge. The deeper I went, the quieter the forest became. My own phone lost service completely within minutes. The trees grew thicker, the light dimmer. The air felt heavier, like the woods were pressing inward. The strange phone kept receiving messages. They said they could hear something moving nearby, that they weren't sure they were alone anymore, that whatever was nearby wasn't approaching, just watching. A cold knot formed in my stomach. I slowed my pace, scanning the trees constantly. I didn't see anything, no movement, no shapes, no sound besides my own footsteps. When the fire tower finally came into view through the thinning trees, they warned me not to turn on my flashlight. They said whatever was nearby reacted to light, that it noticed patterns. That sentence sent a chill through my spine. They said the thing could now see the faint glow from my phone screen. I slipped the device into my pocket and continued carefully. The silhouette of the tower loomed ahead, crooked and skeletal against the gray sky. No movement around it, no signs of anyone hiding near the shed. I asked where exactly they were. After a long pause, they said they weren't sure anymore. That answer unsettled me deeply. They explained that something had moved closer when I approached, that they could no longer see where I was coming from, that whatever was nearby had shifted positions silently. I told them I was almost there. That's when the tone changed. They told me not to come any closer. Confused? I asked why. The reply came slowly, deliberately. They said I wasn't talking to them anymore. My blood ran cold. I demanded an explanation. The final message appeared. I was holding their phone. The screen went black. The device powered off completely in my hand. No signal, no battery, no response. And behind me, I heard footsteps. Not distant, not faint, close enough to feel through the ground. I didn't turn around. I ran. I crashed through branches and loose gravel, lungs burning, heart hammering, not daring to look back. I didn't stop until I reached open trail, and my phone finally picked up signal again. When I looked behind me, the forest was empty. No movement, no sound, no sign that anything had followed me. The strange phone never turned back on. I left it at the ranger station the next morning. They told me no hikers had been reported missing near the tower. No emergency calls, no stranded visitors, no signs of anyone being out there. Just an abandoned fire tower and miles of empty forest. Sometimes, late at night, my phone vibrates in my pocket with no notification on the screen. No message, no missed call. Just vibration. And the lingering feeling that something still remembers the sound of my footsteps in the dark. Story 3. I used to believe that the worst thing that could happen in a house was an intruder breaking in. A stranger forcing their way inside. A sudden noise in the night. A door opening when it shouldn't. I was wrong. The real terror isn't when someone enters your home. It's when you slowly realize someone never left. Not a ghost, not imagination, not a dream. A living person who learned your schedule, memorized your routines, and listened to your breathing through the walls. And by the time you notice them, you're already sharing the same space. I moved into the house in early spring. It was an older 2-story place at the edge of a quiet neighborhood. Faded paint, narrow hallways, thin walls that carried sound easily. The rent was cheap. The landlord didn't ask many questions, and I liked the idea of living somewhere calm after years in loud apartments. The first few weeks felt normal, peaceful even. Birds in the morning, wind brushing against the siding at night, the occasional creak of old floorboards settling. Then the small things started. At first, it was missing objects, nothing valuable. A spoon that wasn't where I left it. My phone charger unplugged and moved to a different outlet. Cabinet doors slightly open when I was sure I'd closed them. I blamed myself. Stress, forgetfulness, muscle memory lying to me. But it kept happening. One night I came home from work and found the bathroom light on upstairs. I distinctly remembered turning it off before leaving that morning. I stood at the bottom of the staircase staring at the glow bleeding down the hallway, trying to convince myself I'd simply made a mistake. I turned it off and went to bed. A few nights later, I heard footsteps, Not the house settling, not pipes knocking, not wind. Footsteps, slow, careful, above me. I froze on the couch, remote still in my hand, heart pounding as I strained to listen. The sound lasted maybe 10 seconds, a soft shift of weight, a faint creak, then stopped completely. I waited a long time before moving again. I told myself it was the building cooling. Old houses made noise. Everyone knew that. Still, I started locking my bedroom door at night. That's when the smells started. Some mornings the hallway carried a faint scent of sweat and stale air. Not strong enough to be obvious, just wrong enough to notice if you paid attention. I washed my sheets more often, opened windows, bought air fresheners. The smell kept coming back. Then food started disappearing. Not entire meals, just small amounts. A slice of bread gone, half a protein bar missing, a water bottle noticeably lighter than it should have been. I even weighed one once, half joking, half uneasy. That night, I didn't sleep much. I started setting traps without realizing it. Tiny things only I would notice. A piece of tape across a closet door. A coin balanced against the pantry handle. Shoes lined up in a specific pattern. Every morning something had shifted. The tape peeled back. The coin on the floor. The shoes slightly out of alignment. Someone was inside my house when I wasn't. My stomach stayed tight constantly. I checked windows, doors, locks. Everything was sealed. No signs of forced entry. No broken glass. No footprints. I installed a cheap motion camera in the hallway and another facing the kitchen. They recorded to my phone. The first night, nothing. The second night, nothing. On the third night, I woke up around 3:11 a.m. for no reason at all. The house felt wrong. Heavy, quiet in a way that pressed against my ears. I checked my phone. One of the cameras had triggered. The clip was only 8 seconds long. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. The hallway camera showed darkness, static, then movement. Something pale slid into frame from the ceiling corner near the vent. A hand. Human fingers. They wrapped around the edge of the vent cover slowly, carefully, like someone testing their weight. Then part of a face appeared. One eye visible through the opening, wide and unblinking, reflecting the infrared light. The eye looked directly into the camera. The clip ended. I dropped my phone. My entire body went cold. I couldn't breathe properly. My mind tried to reject what I'd just seen, but the image burned into my memory. Someone was inside the walls. I grabbed my keys and bolted out of the house without even putting on shoes. I sat in my car shaking, replaying the footage again and again to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. I called the police. They arrived quickly. 2 officers walked the house with flashlights while I waited outside, wrapped in a blanket they'd brought from the car. They checked every room. Attic access, crawl space, basement. Nothing. No one. The vents were secure. No obvious openings. No damage. One officer suggested it could have been an animal or a reflection glitch. I showed him the video again. His face tightened slightly, but he didn't say much. They filed a report and told me to call if anything else happened. I didn't go back inside that night. The next day, I hired a contractor to inspect the walls and ventilation. He found something strange behind the upstairs hallway wall. A hollow space that wasn't on the blueprints. A narrow cavity connecting between floors, likely left over from an old renovation decades ago. Inside it, they found trash. Food wrappers, empty bottles, dirty blankets, handwritten notes on scraps of paper, old batteries, a flashlight with dead cells. The space smelled like a body had been living there for a long time. Someone had been using the walls as a hidden room. There was a small opening behind a loose vent panel that allowed access in and out. They never found the person. No fingerprints, no identity, no sign of where they went. I moved out within 3 days. Even now, years later, I still catch myself listening too closely to walls, still locking doors twice, still feeling uneasy in quiet rooms. Because the worst part wasn't that someone broke into my house. It was that they learned how to live there without me noticing. They knew when I slept, when I left, when I showered, when I ate. They were close enough to hear me breathe. And if the camera hadn't caught that single movement, I might still be sharing my home with something I never knew existed. Story 4. People always talk about bad vibes like it's some dramatic, made-up thing. Like a spooky feeling you get because you watched a horror movie too late. But a real bad feeling doesn't feel like fear at first. It feels like a warning your body understands before your brain does. And the night I finally listened to mine, it was already too late. I had just moved into a duplex on the edge of town. Cheap rent, quiet street. The kind of place you take when you're trying to start over and not spend every paycheck on a studio apartment with paper-thin walls. The landlord seemed normal. He showed me around quickly, handed me 2 keys, and told me the previous tenant left in a hurry. I didn't ask what that meant. I assumed it meant a breakup, or a job change, or the kind of life stuff people don't want to explain to strangers. The first week, nothing happened. The second week, I started noticing the door. My bedroom door. It never fully latched. It would close, and it would look closed, but if you didn't press it firmly, it would sit there like it was holding its breath, just barely unsealed. If I turned on the hallway light at night, a thin line of brightness would leak through like the door was smirking at me. I told myself I'd fix it, tighten the hinge, replace the latch, add it to the list of new place problems. But then it started doing something else. I would shut it before bed, and I'd wake up to find it cracked open. Not wide, not dramatic, just a few inches, like someone had opened it. Just enough to look in. The first time it happened, I blamed myself. Maybe I didn't close it. Maybe the draft pulled it. Old houses shifted. The second time, I put a folded receipt between the door and the frame as a marker. In the morning, the receipt was on the floor. The third time, I slept with the bedroom light on. Not bright, just a lamp, enough to keep the corners from getting too deep. I still woke up around 3 a.m., and the door was open again. I stared at that gap for a long time, waiting for something to move. Nothing did. The hallway was dark, empty, silent, but I couldn't shake the feeling that silence wasn't proof of safety. It was proof of patience. The next day, I bought a cheap door alarm. One of those small ones that sticks on with tape and shrieks if the door opens. That night I installed it and went to bed feeling stupid for being this paranoid. And then I woke up again. 3:07 a.m. No alarm, but the door was open. My stomach turned hard enough that I thought I might throw up, because there was only one way that door could open without triggering the alarm. Someone had disabled it. I got out of bed and checked it with shaking hands. The alarm piece was still on the frame. The sensor piece was still on the door. But the batteries were missing. The little back panel had been opened cleanly, like someone knew exactly how to do it without making noise. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the edge of my bed until sunrise with a kitchen knife in my hand, feeling ridiculous and terrified at the same time. In the morning, I called the landlord. He laughed, not cruelly, but like he was brushing off a silly complaint. "Old doors," he said. "They swell, they shift. Happens all the time." I told him about the batteries. The pause on the line was short, but it was real. Then he cleared his throat. "Maybe you forgot you took them." "I didn't." Another pause. "I can send someone this week," he said, "to fix the latch." After I hung up, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. The hallway vent outside my bedroom. The screws looked newer. Not shiny new, but recently touched. Slightly scuffed, like someone had loosened them and tightened them again. I stood under it staring up, trying to tell myself I was overanalyzing, but my body wouldn't relax. That night, I didn't just shut my door. I wedged a chair under the handle. I placed a glass on the floor near the crack so any movement would knock it. I turned on my bedside lamp and kept my phone in my hand. I fell asleep anyway, like exhaustion always wins eventually. And I woke up to the sound of glass shattering. I sat bolt upright. The chair was still under the handle, but it had shifted. dragged slightly, leaving a faint scrape mark on the floor. The glass was broken near the doorway, and the door was open wider than it had ever been. Not all the way, but enough that the hallway looked like a mouth. I didn't move. I couldn't. Every instinct screamed that if I moved, whatever was out there would know I was awake. Then I heard it. Breathing. Not mine. Low and controlled, coming from the hallway. I stared at the gap until my eyes burned, trying to force my vision to pick up a shape. The hallway was dark, but not empty. I could feel it the way you feel a presence behind you before you turn. A slow creak came from the floorboards outside. A careful shift of weight. Whoever was there wasn't rushing. They weren't panicking. They were listening. I slid my phone up under the blanket and tried to dial 911 without looking. My fingers were clumsy, shaking so badly I hit the wrong buttons twice. I didn't dare speak. The call connected. I held the phone near my mouth but stayed silent, praying the operator would understand what was happening. On the other end, I heard a voice. Muffled, confused. "Hello." In the hallway, the breathing stopped. Then, a soft sound, like a fingertip touching the door frame. A slow drag along the wood. It moved downward, inch by inch, as if someone was tracing where the door ended, and where my room began. The operator spoke again, louder. "Hello? Can you hear me?" I wanted to answer. I wanted to scream. But I knew if I made noise, the thing in the hallway wouldn't have to guess anymore. The fingertip sound stopped. A long silence followed. Then the floor creaked again, closer. My throat tightened so hard it felt like swallowing glass. I forced my lips open and whispered into the phone, barely audible. "Someone's in my house." On the other end, the operator's tone snapped sharp and professional. "Stay on the line. Are you safe? Where are you?" As soon as she spoke, the sound in the hallway changed. The controlled breathing returned, but faster now, annoyed, urgent. A footstep, another, then a quick retreat, the floorboards groaning in sequence as someone moved away from my door. A moment later, I heard a faint metallic rattle, like a vent cover being adjusted. Then nothing. Total silence. Police arrived within minutes, but those minutes felt like a whole lifetime. I stayed on the line, staring at the open doorway, waiting for the shadow to come back. When the officers finally cleared the house, they found the upstairs hallway vent slightly loose. Behind it was a narrow maintenance crawl space that ran between the walls, an old construction shortcut that wasn't on the property listing. Inside the crawl space, a blanket, a water bottle, empty snack wrappers, and a small flashlight. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't the house settling. Someone had been using the walls as a hallway. Someone had been opening my door from the other side, watching me sleep, learning my habits, testing how much they could do without being caught. The worst part wasn't the evidence. It was what they didn't find. No fingerprints, no clear footprints, no face on any camera, because I didn't have cameras. Just proof that someone had been close enough to touch my door, without ever stepping into the light. I didn't stay there another night. When I packed my things, I kept looking at the vents like they were eyes. Every shadow felt like a hiding place. Every quiet moment felt loaded. And even now, in a completely different home, with solid locks and real alarms, I still sleep with my bedroom door fully latched. Because I learned something I can't unlearn. A locked front door doesn't mean you're alone. Sometimes, it only means whoever's inside already knows how to stay hidden. Story 5. If you've never worked a night shift alone, you don't understand how loud quiet can be. It isn't peace, it's pressure. In the daytime, a building can feel harmless, boring, forgettable, safe. But after midnight, when the lights flatten everything and the silence starts filling every gap, you realize how much the world depends on other people being around. I learned that at Station 11. It wasn't even supposed to be a real job. Just a temporary overnight gig I took after stepping away from school for a semester. A friend of my uncle worked for the Regional Transit Authority and said they needed someone responsible enough To sit in a small commuter station from late night to early morning. Keep the doors locked, answer an emergency phone, monitor cameras, log anything unusual. Easy money, boring work. I needed boring. Station 11 sat 15 miles outside the city, where suburbs thinned into scrub woods and abandoned industrial lots. The passenger line was busy morning and evening. After midnight, it was mostly freight or maintenance. The last passenger train passed around 12:10 a.m., and after that, the station became an empty island of glass and concrete. The overnight office was a small room built into the side of the platform, with a reinforced window facing the tracks. Inside, a desk, a camera monitor, a radio console that looked older than I was, and a wall-mounted emergency phone. 2 doors mattered: the office door to the platform vestibule, and a heavy metal door behind the office that led into a narrow maintenance corridor. During training, most people were casual about it. Lock both doors, don't let anyone in. If someone needs help, call it in. Don't play hero. Then, one trainer, Ellis, added something in a tone that wasn't a joke. And if you hear the radio on Channel 2, ignore it. I laughed. Interference? Ellis didn't laugh back. Just don't respond. Why would I respond? He looked at me with tired, flat eyes. Because it sounds like someone talking to you, and because it uses your name. Another trainer, Marisol, rolled her eyes. He's messing with you. Channel 2 isn't even used. That console is ancient. You'll hear static at worst. Ellis's jaw tightened. I'm not messing with him. I told myself it was workplace folklore. Every job has it. The haunted hallway. The don't go in the basement. Stuff people say to make night shifts feel less dull. My first few weeks were exactly what I expected. Nothing. I'd bring coffee, scroll my phone when the signal worked, do an hourly walk, check doors, log time, sit back down. The platform light stayed on all night, washing the concrete in a pale glow. Beyond that glow, the world was black. No homes, no streetlights, just tree line and a distant highway. Then the first weird thing happened, and it didn't come with shadows or screams. It came as paperwork. One night I arrived and found a neat stack of printed incident reports on my desk. That wasn't unusual, except every report was dated 2 days in the future. I checked my phone, checked the wall calendar. The dates didn't match. The reports looked real, station ID, timestamps, template language, but the incidents weren't normal. 02:13 a.m., audible movement in utility corridor. No visual confirmation on camera. 02:41 a.m., platform lights flicker, no power interruption reported. 03:07 a.m., emergency phone rings, line silent. 03:11 a.m., channel 2 active, unverified caller, operator does not respond. I read the last line twice. I should have thrown the stack away. Instead, I slid it into my log binder and told myself it was an automated system glitch, a printer queue mix-up. But the rest of the night I kept glancing at the clock. At 02:13, nothing. At 02:41, nothing. By 03:05, I felt embarrassed for taking it seriously. I was about to relax completely when the emergency phone rang. It didn't ring like a normal phone. It was old and loud, a harsh metallic trill that made the office feel suddenly small. Nobody called that line at night. Dispatch used the radio. Emergencies were rare at this station. I picked up. Station 11. All I heard was breathing. Faint, steady, mouth close to the receiver. I froze. Hello? The breathing stopped. A soft click. Dead line. I wrote it down immediately, like writing could turn fear into something manageable. 03:07 a.m. Emergency phone rang. Line silent. Possible prank. My hand still felt cold when the camera monitor flickered. Just a quick distortion, like someone pinched the signal. It steadied, then flickered again. I clicked through feeds. Platform, empty. Parking lot, empty. Track view, nothing moving. Then the radio console popped like a speaker waking up. Static poured into the office. The display lit up. CH2. I hadn't even known Channel 2 was accessible. Dispatch used Channel 1, and training barely mentioned anything else. The static lowered, and a quiet male voice shaped itself out of it. Station 11. My throat tightened. It didn't sound ghostly. It sounded close, like someone speaking low so nobody nearby would hear. Station 11, the voice repeated. Confirm you're awake. I didn't answer. Static hissed, then lowered again. I know you're there, the voice said. I can see your light. My eyes snapped to the platform camera feed. At the far end of the platform, where the lights were dimmer and the image got grainy, there was a shape standing near the edge of the glow. It hadn't been there moments ago. The radio voice stayed calm. Don't turn the camera away. My heart hammered. I kept staring at the screen. The shape shifted, just slightly, like it realized I was watching. The voice on the radio didn't speak for a moment. Then, in a thin gap between static, it said my name. Not shouted, not threatening, just familiar. I didn't respond, because suddenly Ellis's warning wasn't a joke anymore. A radio voice can't see your office light. A radio voice can't know your name, unless someone was outside the station watching through the glass, or unless someone was already inside. I forced myself to call dispatch on Channel 1, my voice too tight. Dispatch, Station 11 overnight. I had radio activity on Channel 2. A pause. Say again? It turned on. Someone spoke. They used my name. Longer pause. Then dispatch. Confirm the platform is clear. I looked at the monitor. The shape still stood at the far end. I can't confirm. There's something out there. Hold position, dispatch said. Do not exit the office. Patrol is en route. 30 minutes feels short until you're alone, staring at a figure you can't identify. The radio went quiet. The shape didn't move. I tried to convince myself it was a post, a shadow, a camera artifact. To test it, I switched the camera feed away for 2 seconds, then back. When I returned, the shape was closer. Not by a lot, but enough that my stomach turned. It moved when I looked away. When police finally arrived, their flashlights swept the platform, and the shape was gone. Officers checked benches, stairwells, trackside gravel. Nothing. One officer returned and asked if I was sure. Yes, I said. They shrugged it off like interference, like trespassing kids, like probably nothing. They didn't have keys for the maintenance corridor door, so they couldn't check it. They told me to stay inside and call again if anything happened. Then they left, and the station returned to silence like it had swallowed the entire incident. I lowered the blinds, turned off the overhead light, kept only a desk lamp on. I sat with my back against the corridor door, like I could physically hold it shut. That was when the radio clicked on again. Static. CH2. The voice returned, calmer than before. You shouldn't call them. My jaw clenched. Who are you? A pause, then, you heard the papers. My blood went cold. What papers? The ones on your desk, it said softly. The ones that already know your night. I stared at the binder. There were more pages under the ones I'd read earlier. I hadn't looked. The voice sharpened. Don't. That was enough. I flipped the stack. 03:33 a.m. Operator attempts to exit office. Vestibule contact. 03:36 a.m. Corridor door forced from inside. 03:41 a.m. Operator relocates to platform. 03:44 a.m. Freight train passes. Audio interference. 03:47 a.m. Operator not located. My stomach dropped. Operator not located, I whispered. The voice sounded almost pleased. It's a record. A record of what? Of what happens when you don't listen. I checked the clock. 03:32 a.m. 1 minute until 03:33. The platform camera still showed an empty far end. No shape now. Just washed concrete and darkness beyond the lights. Then the office door handle, the door that led to the platform vestibule, moved. Slowly. Testing. I'd locked it. The handle returned to neutral, then moved again. Patient. Controlled. Like whoever was out there wasn't panicking. Like they had time. My hands went numb. The radio voice murmured, "Good, you're learning." And then I heard the sound behind me, a soft metallic click. The corridor door latch shifted. My spine went rigid. I turned just enough to see the handle move. Slowly, carefully, not forced, not kicked, unlocked, from the other side. The corridor door opened a crack, spilling a seam of darkness that felt different, thicker, older, like air from a sealed space. A smell hit me. Cold metal, dust, insulation. The radio voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't move." I couldn't tell if it was warning me or commanding me. The office door handle jiggled again. 2 doors, 2 sides, me in the middle. My brain finally snapped into action. I grabbed my keys, flashlight, phone, anything that made me feel less helpless. I lunged for the emergency phone and ripped it off the mount. The line was already open. Breathing. The same steady breathing as before. Then the voice came through the receiver clearer than the radio, as if it had moved closer. "You can't call out," it said softly. "Not from here." The corridor door opened wider. Something shifted in the darkness on the other side. Tall, close enough that it didn't need to step fully into the office to let me know it was there. The overhead platform lights flickered, once like a blink. Far down the tracks, a low vibration began, subtle at first, then building fast. A freight train approaching. I looked at the clock, 03:43 a.m. The report had said the freight would pass at 03:44. Noise, cover, chaos. I dropped the phone, grabbed the flashlight, and ran for the office door to the platform. The handle was already turning, but I slammed into it anyway, forcing it open just enough to squeeze through into the vestibule. Cold air hit my face. Platform lights burned my eyes. I bolted onto the platform. The freight train roar grew louder, drowning everything. And then, impossibly, the voice came through the public announcement speakers overhead, the ones that weren't supposed to activate at night. My name again. Then, wrong way. I didn't stop. I sprinted down the stairwell to the parking lot because open space felt safer than hallways. My lungs burned. The metal steps clanged under my shoes. I burst into the lot. Empty. Dark. My car sat alone under a dead light pole. I fumbled the keys and dove inside, slamming the door, locking it over and over. Outside, through the windshield, a figure stepped into the weak spill of light. Not a blur this time, not a distant shadow. A person, tall, lean, hood up, still. It didn't run, didn't bang on the glass. It just watched me struggle to start the car. The engine coughed, then caught. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. I reversed fast, gravel spitting, and tore out of the lot. I didn't stop driving until streetlights returned and my hands stopped shaking enough to grip the wheel without pain. I pulled into a gas station and sat there with the engine running, staring at nothing. Dispatch hadn't called back. No one checked in. I called my supervisor contact and left a message that was mostly panic. Then I called dispatch again and told them I had left the station for my safety. This time, they didn't argue. They told me to stay put. A supervisor would meet me. An hour later, a transit supervisor named Gentry arrived, older, heavy-set, serious eyes. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked one question. "Did you answer Channel 2? I asked who it was. Gentry's expression flickered, subtle but real, like I'd confirmed something he didn't want confirmed. "What is Channel 2? I demanded. "Because someone was in that station." Gentry rubbed his jaw. "Channel 2 is an old maintenance frequency," he said. "It shouldn't broadcast through the speakers. It shouldn't override the emergency line. It shouldn't—" He stopped himself. "Then how did it?" I asked. He looked toward the dark horizon. "Station 11 used to be Station 10, he said. I stared. "What?" "They rebuilt it years back, shifted the platform, upgraded the office," he said. "But they didn't rebuild everything. Some of the old corridors stayed, some of the wiring stayed." He paused, "And some old problems stayed." "What problems?" My voice came out thin. Gentry hesitated. Then, People used to hide in the corridor. Not just homeless, drifters, creeps, people who liked watching trains, people who knew the blind spots. My blood felt cold. And? One night, he said quietly, a maintenance worker went in there because he heard Channel 2. My stomach tightened. What happened? Gentry's eyes didn't move. He didn't come out. The words landed like a weight. There was an investigation, he continued. No blood, no body, just his badge and flashlight. The corridor connects farther than the schematics show. Old vents, access points. So you knew, I said. We knew it was an issue, he admitted. And you still send people there alone? Gentry's face tightened. Nothing has happened in years. It happened tonight. He nodded once, as if he couldn't argue. Then he took out a heavier set of keys. We're going back, he said. Not alone. We returned with 2 other transit employees and a police officer. Daylight made the station look harmless again. Normal. Like a place that never held its breath. The officer checked doors. No forced entry. Cameras showed nothing after I ran. Like the station had erased itself. Gentry unlocked the maintenance corridor door. The smell hit us immediately. Dust and cold metal. The corridor was narrow, lit by a few buzzing strips of light that flickered weakly. It shouldn't have had power, but it did. We walked in a line. I hated how my footsteps echoed. The corridor ran farther than I